Yeah! This is Elijah's podium today.
Just before the return of Christ, he will appear.
Yes, just before he will appear. No, Pastor Slog's going to join me up here.
Oh yeah!
Oh yeah! So we're going to wait for him. Why not? Come on, he started the church. He can do what he wants.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! Woo! 3, 2, 1, yeah! Don't worry, I told them that it's Elijah's podium and you started the church, so it really doesn't matter. You can do what you want. So
To be honest, Chris Wallace was telling me what was backing up the toilets yesterday. So that's where I was just now.
worthwhile cause. Shout out to Chris. Thank you for fixing
Thank you, Chris.
Well, before we begin, Happy Mother's Day!
Happy Mother's Day. We love our moms.
All the mamas in the room. You guys ready for today's message? Well, let's begin. Good morning, Arising Church!
Good morning.
Last week we heard a profound message. Mosaic Messiah. We're charged to model Christ in these ways. We're going to forgive and reconcile like Joseph in the way he united the brotherhood. We're going to champion God's word and unite the brotherhood around it like Moses. We're going to cause our brothers to inherit what God has for them like Joshua. We're going to honor what God has anointed no matter how unpopular it is like David. And make our brothers rule with Christ like Solomon. That was an incredible message, wasn't it? These men, it's easy to see them as extraordinary. Man, they're the best. Hey, if I was in the presence of one of these guys, I'd be tempted myself to I don't know if I should be near you, Moses. But these men are not just extraordinary, they're exemplary. We're called to model them as they have modeled Christ. And this week, we're going to zoom into one of those mosaics. Moses.
Yeah, that works.
It's appropriate. There are in the Bible who are talked about or lauded more than Moses and David. They take up such a vast amount of the Old Testament, it's shocking. Moses' story itself spans 130 chapters of the Tanakh. As we've discussed, his contributions span law, writings, and prophets from Genesis all the way to Revelation. He's singing a song in harmony with the Lamb.
Amen.
Today we want to walk you through a progression in his life we want you to model. It's also fitting because this Wednesday at 7 p.m. we will be beginning our study in Exodus.
Moses spoke directly with God.
Wow.
Listen to Numbers 12:6-8.
And he said, "Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream."
Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, face to face, clearly and not in riddles. And he beholds the form of the Lord.
Wow.
Exodus 33:11. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses turned again into the camp, his assistant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. What kind of man has this relationship with God? Who's faithful in all God's house, who speaks mouth to mouth, face to face with him, who God speaks to clearly and not in riddles, who even beholds the form of the Lord. What kind of man was Moses? I mean, it'd be easy to see Moses as exceptional, but we don't see men as exceptional. We see them as you'll see the difference because we use that a lot. Exceptional means there's no way you could expect to be like him. Exemplary means this is the model that we're going after. Do you see the difference? Exceptional versus exemplary. Jesus did wondrous miracles, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, didn't he?
Yeah.
Sweet, just making sure we're all still Christians in here. 4 years ago, Pastor Eric showed us that side by side, the miracles that the Lord did through Moses seem to be even greater. Look at this slide. By the way, you don't have to be insecure for Jesus. He's secure enough. So we can show a slide like this. Someone's like, oh, good. Jesus turned water into wine. That was amazing, wasn't it? Moses turned the Nile into blood. With Jesus, the food was multiplied to feed 5,000. With Moses, millions of people were fed every day for 40 years. With Jesus, there was a miraculous catch of fish with the disciples, wasn't there? But Moses split water as deep as the seas. Oh, Jesus walked through walls, didn't he? Yeah, but at Moses' command, the stellar realm stood still. Look, Jesus raised a man from the dead. Elijah's bones.
Do we have a typo there?
Let's look at Caiaphas. Man, there's a few of them. Caiaphas spoke for God. Yeah, but Balaam's donkey. Here we go. Blood saved an individual with Jesus. But with Moses, the Passover lamb, the blood saved the nation.
Oh, come on, those are good.
Those are good.
Excuse me, hey, Moses had some mistakes and rough starts. Sometimes slides and men up and stages have rough starts. But look at what Moses did. He had some incredible acts. It's when you put it next to you, it's like, well, oh my goodness, the whole Nile to blood. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And see, again, you don't have to be insecure for Jesus. What Moses longed for, that all people would be prophets. Yeah. Jesus himself fulfills everything that Moses longed for.
Yeah.
And the covenant that Jesus brings, his blood, empowers us we're supposed to do things even greater than Moses. Yeah. That's what makes Jesus even greater. Yeah. But consider the amazing acts that this one man did pre-Christ. And see yourself as having to do even more than that. Because he's exemplary and you have so much more than he did in Christ. But Moses was faithful in all my house, speaking mouth to mouth, face to face, clearly not in riddles. He beholds the form of the Lord. Can you imagine that kind of relationship with Adonai, face to face? You hear that story, don't you want that?
You guys want that?
Don't you want to be, man, I wish I could see the tabernacle. I wish I could see the tent. I wish I could behold his glory. Can you imagine being on the mountain? Show me your face, your glory. I want that. Do you? Yes. Are you sure?
Yeah. You sure?
Yeah. I want you to think about that in light of how God actually presents himself to Moses and the people.
Look at this slide, the thick darkness. Whenever you think of God, do you think of thick darkness surrounding him? In Exodus 20:21, we hear that Moses went into the thick darkness where God was. In Deuteronomy 5:22 through 23, the voice of God is described as being heard out of the midst of the darkness. In 1 Kings 8:12, Solomon acknowledges that the Lord said he would dwell in thick darkness as the glory of God descends upon the newly built temple. In Psalm 18:11, David describes the Lord as making darkness his covering. Wow. In Psalm 97:2, it says that clouds and thick darkness are all around the Lord. What do you do with that? That's law, prophets, and writings that the Lord is surrounded by thick darkness. Listen to Exodus 20:18 through 26. We'll just read 18 through 20 starting off. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen." But listen to this. We just asked you, do you want to be the kind of person that speaks with God face to face? Do you want to be the kind of person who engages with the Lord as he is? Well, these people have this opportunity in this moment. They're hearing the voice of God. They're trembling with fear, and they're staying at a distance. And they say, "Speak to us yourself, Moses, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die."
Wow.
Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." Listen, we've preached messages before about the fear of God, but we want to tell you something. The way the Lord presents himself, do we all agree that God could present himself however he wants to? If he wanted to just come across as like a giant, what were those bears? Care Bear? Like a giant Care Bear just shining in the sky. He could, couldn't he? The Lord could present himself as that way. But he dwells surrounded by thick darkness. And he presents himself to these people in a way that makes them tremble with fear. He's not trying to avoid making these people afraid. You ever think about that? He actually comes in a way that makes them afraid, and when they're afraid, it's actually accomplishing his goal.
And think about who these people were. I hate to say it, but they weren't Chicago suburbanites. These people were born and raised in slavery.
Yeah.
These were tough people. Imagine some of the stories that we read in the beginning of Exodus about mistreatment, hard labor. And they, after seeing everything in the plagues of Egypt, all the awful things God does to Egypt, they tremble at the mountain.
Yeah.
When was the last time you trembled with fear?
Yeah.
Here's another image. Deuteronomy 4. It says, listen, look at this slide. These are pictures from this mountain today in Saudi Arabia. "You came near me, but stood at the foot of the mountain, while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form, only a voice." To this day, you can see on this mountain, it still burned to this day. Because it's not just it's a cloud, it's lightning. The actual mountain was on fire to heaven, says Moses in Deuteronomy.
Yeah. The people are finally getting a chance to speak with God. And what they see causes them to be afraid. But think about this. They choose Moses to go. "You go speak to God for us." Do you think Moses was afraid? Everybody's afraid, including Moses. Everybody's afraid because God successfully instills fear in these people. But Moses tells them not to be afraid, though he himself is afraid.
Well, how do you know that, Pastor? He doesn't say he's afraid. He just says, "Do not fear," and he goes up the mountain. Let's go to Hebrews 12. There's a good commentary on this story. "You have not come to a mountain that can be touched, and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death." Listen to this. "The sight was so terrifying that Moses said, 'I am trembling with fear.'" We're going to walk through. Moses has encountered the Lord before, seen great acts in Egypt, crossed the sea on dry ground, and he's trembling at the sight of God, scared of what might happen. But how does he respond?
Oh, come on.
We're going to go into a minute. But Moses perpetually is in the sight of God, commanded with fear and difficult things. And every time he approaches the darkness, fear never determines direction for Moses.
Yeah. Look at this first slide, the presence of fear. In Exodus 3:6, Moses is afraid at the burning bush. "Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro," this is Exodus 3, "his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. And immediately God said, Do not come any closer. Have you ever been walking somewhere and then someone's like, Stop! And you're like, you pause for a second because of whatever you were about to walk into, you know they're trying to stop you from going any further. Wait, stop! And God says, Don't come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. God presented himself and spoke in such a way as to elicit fear from Moses. Do you see? He could have only been reassuring and only comforting, but he presented himself in a way that caused Moses to hide his face. Once he heard who this was, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he was afraid.
There's something about knowing who he was in the presence of that scared him.
Yeah.
The God who was the God of these men, he knew. He was afraid to be in his presence. He hid his face. Well, I asked you a question. When was the last time you trembled with fear? I'm going to suggest, I don't think many of you have been in situations as terrifying as these. Yeah. And this is being in the presence of God.
Right.
Let's go to this next slide. Because what happens in Exodus 4 is Moses still stays in the presence of God. Right. He doesn't run away. He asks God. He goes, How is this going to happen, Lord? Help me. And he speaks with the Lord. Yeah. He has the courage to, despite being afraid, actually speak to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This next slide. In Exodus 14:15, Moses, he freezes in the face of an intimidating obstacle. But see how he responds.
This was back from our season of the splitting sea slide that we went through.
Yes, you should remember that message. It says, as Pharaoh approached, verse 10, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? Why have you done, what have you done to us to bring us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? Would it have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert?
I always love that that's the people's response. Now we see what your master plan was. It was to lead us all out here to die.
Remember Moses, his hesitation at the bushes, these people are not going to like me. And he goes and delivers them. Plot twist, they don't like him. And he's standing in front of a sea. There's a pillar of fire, people who don't like him, and an army who doesn't like him even more. Yeah. What does Moses say? Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Not afraid, right? Verse 15, the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. He's confronted with fear, yet he tells them not to be afraid. But he himself, admittedly, he stopped at the sea. And God has already told him, I'm going to miraculously deliver you. They're going to chase you down. It's going to get bad. Yet at a moment, he freezes at an obstacle in front of him. Because he cries out to God, and God's like, what do I have to do about this? I already told you. Why are you crying out to me? Just go. Move on. And he does.
You ever froze up before you were about to do an intimidating task?
Yes.
Maybe you're about to confess sin and you freeze. Maybe you're about to give a word and you freeze. Maybe you're about to engage with your wife to recover from an argument that you're in the middle of and you freeze. Right? Maybe you're about to engage in intimacy and you freeze because there's a lot of problems that haven't been dealt with yet. We can understand Moses freezing before an intimidating task, can't we? But he tells the people confidently, do not be afraid. These Egyptians that are here today, you'll never see again. And then some conversation between him and the Lord is like, Lord's like, what are you doing? Go forward. But that's not what you see. It's hard to catch that nuance there in the passage. But Moses was once again before an intimidating obstacle in the presence of difficulty, hardship. But how does he respond? He speaks to the Lord and he moves forward.
Come on.
Exodus 19, Moses again is up on top of the mountain, and we're going to dig into it a little bit more, how he's trembling with fear. Some of y'all want the resolution real quick. Just sit with us in this for just a little bit longer. We'll resolve how Moses comes out on top. But you got to feel this because Moses knows what it's like to tremble with fear. Moses knows what it's like to feel fear and then in the presence of that, still move forward. Some frightening things that are happening around. Let's paint this scene for you one more time. This is what the Lord does. Remember, the Lord does this whole thing. He creates this whole scene. There's thunder. There's a trumpet that gets louder and louder. How many of you, when you first hear the Tuesday morning, every first Tuesday, the 10 a.m., at first you're like, what is that? Oh, Tuesday. Right?
Every time.
And that's not on a mountain burning with fire. What was that like? I wonder if it was so loud that they were covering their ears. But there was blazing fire. Did you see that picture, how big the mountain was and where it was burned? This was not a small concentrated campfire. This was a massive fire, darkness. And it says that the fire burned to the heart of heaven. Smoke was rising to the heart of heaven, or to the center of heaven. And then God himself was speaking to these people, and God created them. The way that they were reacting was they thought they were going to die. He could have comforted them all. He allowed them to feel that. He says in 19:9, I'm going to come to you in a dense cloud. He's talking to Moses. You think Moses wasn't afraid? With all these sights and sounds, you think Moses wasn't afraid? 19:16, God made the people tremble with the sight and sound. Do you think Moses didn't tremble? We just read in Hebrews 12 that he did tremble. 19:19 says the trumpet blast grew louder and louder. Do you think Moses wasn't afraid? And then God calls to Moses in the sight of all the people who were terrified. And then God even says to Moses, warn the people not to come any closer or they'll perish. Now we look back, we know why Moses was special. But do you think Moses ever thought in a moment, why am I special? You're calling me forward. All these people afraid they're going to die. I'm afraid. Well, we know when he's talking with the Lord at the burning bush, he is having these back and forth thoughts, questions, conversations in his own mind. But let's look at what Moses, how he responds to this darkness, to these terrifying things. And we'll introduce our title to you.
Today's message is titled, Dark Side of the Nun. Yeah, I think that's where Tolkien got his inspiration for Mordor. Look at Exodus 20:20. This is key. The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. A clear contrast is being made. When in the presence of God, at his commands, at his voice, at what he will call you to do, you can either stand at a distance or approach the darkness. Not unlike Brother Luke's word during worship. There is no in between. You either stand at a distance or approach the thick darkness. And that's where we get our title. Look at this slide. The word approached is nagas. Come near, to approach, to make linear movement, to move to the presence of God. And that word starts with a nun. So there's two choices. There's two different sides of the nun you can be on. The dark side of the nun, where Moses is, where he's approaching the darkness. Or the light side of the nun, where the people stand at a distance. Wow. We're going to beckon you to approach the darkness, the dark side of the nun, where God actually is.
Other languages can be fun sometimes, right? Don't spend too much time trying to analyze different words and different languages. What you need to be aware of is that at a distance, it looked terrifying, right? At a distance, God with the thick darkness surrounding him looks terrifying. But what does Moses actually experience as he comes close to God? What would you have done if you were in that situation? Go to that next one. Go to the next slide. Get that off of there so I can gain the attention back of some of these ADD people in here. Especially this one right here on the front row. Listen, fear does not determine direction. Moses was afraid. We've talked in here about fearing nothing but God. But the truth is, can we be honest for a second? You got fear, don't you? I've got fear. The goal is to fear nothing but God. And on our way there, we're having to deal with the very present reality of fears that we have. Look, even as husbands, fathers, we have to present that strong front like Moses does so many times. Don't be afraid, family. The Lord will provide. Oh, God. I'm in a real bad spot here, Lord. No, honey, we're going to be fine. The Lord will take care of us. Please, God, please. Please come through. I don't want to look like an idiot.
That's very real. Hey, it's fitting on Mother's Day. One of these ways the Lord has dealt with me in this is childbirth.
Ooh.
There's many mamas in here about to give birth. That can feel like some darkness ahead of you.
Yeah.
But there's light past the darkness.
Yeah.
There's a child to be born. You see, we had 4 children. That first time, I was trembling with fear.
You were?
I was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I was scared. She was way less scared than I was. But me, watching your wife go through pain and delivery, it's unknown. It's a fearful thing.
Yeah.
But mamas and daddies, isn't it worth it? But you have to go through the darkness to reach the light. And let me tell you a secret. I was afraid every time.
Yeah.
I was afraid, man, I'm going to do better next time. I'm going to be like full of faith and no fear. Next time, it's like every day up until, man, I'm going to be so brave and no fear. And it starts to, then contractions are coming. Oh, boy.
Hey, but you made it through every time, didn't you?
But see, that's the point. Moses was telling them not to be afraid, and he was afraid.
Yeah.
You are going to have to rouse yourself to, even though you're afraid, tell those in your vicinity, do not be afraid. And make sure fear never determines your direction.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we're gonna dig a little bit deeper into that subject for just a second. So the kids need discipline. The kids need direction. And your wife is like, what are we going to do about these kids? What are we going to do about our son? What are we going to do about our daughter? Things are so bad right now. Honey, what should we do? The father, we're going to do this, and it's going to work. Oh, God. I have no idea what I'm doing. Don't be afraid, honey. This is going to work with the kids. Right? Anyone else? What are we going to do about what the Lord has called us to do? We're going to keep doing this right now. This is what the Lord has shown us. This is what we're doing. Father, sometimes I too am afraid of where our lives look like they're heading. Help me, please. in the presence of fear, still moving forward. Fear does not determine direction. Moses was afraid every time, but he spoke with God and he moved forward. Look at this next slide. Moses is afraid at the burning bush. Does Moses run away? He speaks with God. He engages. He's afraid, it says it, but he engages with God, and then he moves forward into what he was afraid of. He still moves forward. It doesn't stop him from going the direction that he's supposed to. Exodus 14:15. He freezes in the face of an intimidating obstacle. But the Lord says, "Why are you crying out to me? Stretch out your staff and move forward." And he does. He doesn't stay frozen. He doesn't stay paralyzed because of analysis over this situation and how he could make it work. He does what God tells him to do, and something supernatural happens. Deuteronomy 9:19. We know that Moses was trembling with fear on the mountain. Hebrews 12 says that that's what was happening. But Moses speaks with God and he moves forward. This fear doesn't paralyze him and cause him to run away. That's the point that we're trying to get to you, that fear doesn't determine direction. I'm afraid. So what? So what are you going to do about it? I'm going to leave. No. Fear doesn't determine your direction. I'm afraid, and yet I'm still moving forward. I'm afraid, and yet I'm going to talk with God. He's going to show us what to do, or if he's already shown us, and I'm going to move forward. Fear doesn't determine your direction. The presence of fear welling up, it will then tell you what you should do to get out of that situation. It's always lying. Every single time, it's always lying to you. It doesn't tell you how to get to life. It doesn't tell you how to accomplish the will of God. It doesn't tell you how to see other people saved. It tells you how to preserve yourself, and that's a mirage anyways. You won't actually be preserved when you listen to your fear. You will perish. That's why he says, don't fear those who can harm the body. Only fear the one who can, after destroying your body, throw you into hell. Jesus himself affirmed, no, it's good that you're afraid. It's good that you're afraid. Now move forward.
Rework your mind. The darkness or on the mountain isn't your sin. It's not all your past failures. God himself put the darkness there to require those who would actually know him to go through it. Do you see that? God himself ensures that it's terrifying to come to his presence. And only those who will face the darkness can actually know who he is and actually speak with him, actually hear his commands. He requires men of God to go through the darkness if they want to meet with him. So when you think about your relationship with the Lord, what you're called to do, is none of it intimidating to you? If nothing about what you're called to do in your circumstance isn't intimidating, maybe it's not very godly. If you're very comfortable in it and nothing that puts a little bit of the fear of God in you to accomplish it, maybe it's because you're standing at a distance on the wrong side of the noon, refusing to go. Moses was afraid. What makes a man isn't that he's afraid, it's what he does in the sight of fear. That's what makes a man who, despite the fear, goes forward. And you see, when Moses finally gets to the mountain, as we recall, he's been in the presence of God before. The first time he pressed on, even though he was afraid, and he saw him in the burning bush. He saw him deliver them. And even he had been up the mountain before when there wasn't a cloud. And so the first time when he sees this cloud, he knows, I know what's beyond the cloud. I know what is beyond the darkness. And I'm more afraid of not reaching beyond the darkness than what could possibly happen to me outside of the darkness. Fear was present, but he was more afraid of what God would do if he didn't approach him. He was more afraid of what he would miss out on if he didn't speak with God. Many of you in here have raised your hands, come to the altar, sat in classes, like, I'm called to be a minister. God's going to make you walk through darkness to actually find him and let him speak with you. He's going to force you to. And you could either stand at a distance, be unsure, purposeless, or approach the darkness and trust he's on the other side.
Deuteronomy 5:29 says, "Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me always, that they would obey my commandments." He doesn't say, "Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me," until the New Testament is written. Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me always. Why? So that they wouldn't come near me? Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me always, so that they walk around trembling all the time? Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me always, so that they would obey, follow my instructions. That's why he wants the fear of him in you. That's why he's not marketing himself as a Stay Puft Marshmallow God, but allows the fear of him to be instilled in all of his children. That's why we don't make the name of God common. That's why we work out our salvation with fear and trembling, to maintain the fear of God as a community, as a people. We want to have a fear of God so that we follow his instructions.
There's a lot that's going to happen in the subsequent chapters in Exodus. Moses will go up, he'll come down. You have to go up again because the tablets are going to be broken. But Moses knows what it's like to approach the darkness. And let's see how he comes out of the darkness in Exodus 34:29. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. God shrouded in gloom, darkness, and fire. And Moses disappears into that. But when he returns, he's shining like the sun himself. Because 1 John 1:5 says, "This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you, God is light. In him there's no darkness at all." That's not a New Testament truth and not an Old Testament reality. That was always the truth. God is not the darkness. He surrounds himself in it. But beyond it, he's nothing but light. But you wouldn't know that if you don't go through the darkness. You wouldn't know if he's light if you're afraid to approach him. Moses wasn't afraid because he had faith that he would come out of the darkness like his God, because he was beyond it, and he comes out radiant. Approaching and pushing past the darkness brings you into the light of God, and you come back a light yourself, to then be a light in every dark circumstance that you will come across. You will become what you behold. Moses approached the darkness, but he beheld the light that was beyond it. All who stand at a distance, what are they beholding? Only the darkness. And they behold it and they'll become it. But those who will descend or ascend into it become light.
Such a good word.
So I want you to think about this. If you're called to represent God, if you're called to be as he is, and he surrounds himself in terror and darkness, but he himself is light, how do you think you should appear to the world? As some sort of Teletubby that's always nice to everybody?
No.
The man of God is like God, who is terrifying at a distance. But once he's approached, he's just, compassionate, and holy, and can make you radiant. Men of God, that is how you should start to see how you can reflect Christ. Not as only loving and nice all the time, but actually terrifying at a distance.
Man, look, if we'll have some men, and I know that there are men in here who rise up and won't be afraid. Even if they are afraid, they'll still move forward into the darkness so that they can dwell with God in the unapproachable light. But you know what happens when a man is brave enough to move forward, even in the presence of fear, to go through the darkness? He actually makes a way for the people behind him. Exodus 24, 1 through 4. Listen to this. So Moses goes up the mountain, right? Everybody else stays at a distance, and they're like, Moses, you speak to God for us. Did it stay that way, though? Exodus 24, starting in verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. You are to worship at a distance, but Moses alone is to approach the Lord. The others must not come near, and the people may not come up with. When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, everything the Lord has said, we will do. Moses then wrote down everything the Lord had said. He got up early the next morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and set up 12 stone pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Down to verse 9. Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel went up and saw the God of Israel. Under his feet was something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. But God did not raise his hand against these leaders of the Israelites. They saw and ate and drank with God. When brothers approach the darkness together, they face their fear together. Then the end goal is clearly not just fear, but fellowship with him. Listen, when you overcommit yourself, and I am a big fan of Christians overcommitting themselves. Big fan. Huge. Overcommit yourself and need the Lord to come through for you. This idea of logical, yeah, but you got to use wisdom. You got to use wisdom. That's always used as the reason why you shouldn't have faith. You got to use wisdom. Got to use wisdom. What that usually means is bring it back down a little bit to where we can accomplish this in our own strength. Bring it back down a little bit to where we don't need God to come through for us. Bring it back down a little bit. Tone it down. Bring it down. Slow it down. Quiet down. So that we don't need God to come through for us. But if brothers will band together and say, let's go through the darkness together. Let's go through all these fearful things together. Let's overcommit ourselves. Let's throw ourselves out there. Come what may, God's going to have to rescue us. Let's start walking into the water as it rises up to our nose and expect that God will part it. If we're going to die, we're going to die. But we believe that he'll part the waters. Either way, we're moving forward. Brothers uniting around that, not caring what happens to them at all. That is what DCD is all about. Don't care a damn. For what? The consequences or the ridicule or the retaliation for living this way in the face of the world. And all of their thoughts about how you should live differently than that. Think about it. Wait a second. Pray about it a little bit more until you come back down to man's thinking. Slow it down a little bit until you come back down to the general consensus of the majority of people in our society. Nothing will get done then. Nobody will ever see God. Nobody will ever cross through and get to actually fellowship in the light with God together. If Moses looks and says, you guys are afraid, I'm not going up there, then nobody gets saved. Nobody gets delivered. Somebody has to be the first one to go through. Somebody has to throw themselves out there and say, if I die, I die. But then when brothers unite around that and they say, he did it, let's do it together. He just did it. We can do this, guys. Let's go forward in it. If we die, we die, but let's go forward. I can't stay here. We can't stay stuck, not moving, not doing anything, not getting anywhere. We've got to try and then go forward into the darkness. And if you perish, you perish. But we believe that the Lord is able to preserve you and bring you to the other side of what you fear, and to dwell with him in that light and to have fellowship with each other and with him.
Don't you think it comforted Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders to have Moses by their side? The man who'd been up the mountain before, the man who had seen the burning bush, the man who had raised his staff over the sea. But Moses had to do all that first. As Pastor was saying, someone's got to be first. See yourself as the one when no one else will approach. When everyone else is standing at a distance, you will approach. Come on. And for Moses, it's not just for him. Who was the one who would be the priest to go into the Holy of Holies? Aaron was, not Moses. Moses would speak to him in the tent of meeting, but he would make Aaron the priest. Aaron's never a priest unless Moses goes up the mountain first. Do you see that kind of responsibility to unite the brotherhood in your walk? You've got to start.
As Pastor Peter's about to read this next passage, we want you to get a picture, a better understanding of what happens as you're living your life this way. Realizing, hey, yeah, that darkness is intimidating, but go right through it. The Lord's on the other side. The longer that you practice this, the more that you do this, you start to get, I know how this works. There's darkness here, but he's on the other side of that. Go through it. Go through this fearful moment. He's on the other side of it. We want you to see the scriptures actually show what happens to Moses as he's done this time and time and time again, being in these fearful situations, but moving forward anyways. Look at what kind of a man this process, this cycle, this repeating process, look at what kind of a man it makes Moses.
This is many verses, but it's worth reading. Exodus 33:12. Moses said to the Lord, so you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you have said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now therefore, if I have found favor in your sight, please show me your ways. Show me your ways that I may know you in order to find favor in your sight. He asks him, God, I've been here before. I have followed you and I've approached you, and now I'm actually asking of you, God. Now that I'm in your presence, I'm asking something of you. Show me your ways. You don't approach the darkness just because you approach the darkness because you want to obey him. You want to know his ways. You want to become like him. And that's Moses' request. It goes on. Consider too that this nation is your people. And he said, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. And he said to him, if your presence will not go with me, do not bring us up from here. For how shall it be known that I have found favor in your sight, I and your people? Is it not in your going with us, so that we are distinct, I and your people, from every other people on the face of the earth? Moses had so acquainted himself with going through the darkness to find God. He's like, I don't want to go unless that same darkness and that same light follow me everywhere. He says, I don't want to go without your presence. And if that means perpetual darkness to find the light, I'll take that over not having you. Moses wasn't afraid to live his entire life walking through darkness to find the light because he knew God was there. The faith of any man knows he will perpetually have to walk through darkness. But he will also every time find his God. And we would rather walk through darkness than stand at a distance. Verse 17, the Lord said to Moses, this very thing that you have spoken I will do. You found favor in my sight, and I know you by name. What kind of man will approach the darkness and do all this and then ask of God such bold things? And God answers him with yes. Moses isn't done asking of God. In verse 18 he says, Moses said, please show me your glory. He had been through the darkness. He had seen the pavement of lapis lazuli. He had seen the fire. And he says, I want more. He had been in the burning light of his presence. I want more, God. Show me more of your glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you and will proclaim before you my name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious. I will show mercy to whom I show mercy. But he said, you cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live.
The threat wasn't gone. The threat of Moses dying as a result of coming close to the Lord was not gone. Do you see that? That never changed. That didn't go away. The Lord was still like, but if you experience me in this way, you will die. But Moses is like, but I want all of it, more. Even at the threat of death. I want more. Bring me as close as you possibly can. He had experienced the fearful things associated with doing what God says and coming near to God. But he had so fallen in love with what was on the other side that he said, again, more, closer, again, more, even at the threat of death.
Moses was a man who was trembling at a snake and a burning bush. And now, not much longer after that, God has to say, slow down. God has to slow him down because he wants so much. He's asking so much. He wants to be so close. God puts the brakes on him. The Lord said, behold, there is a place by me where you shall stand on the rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock. I will cover you with my hand until I've passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. This is the kind of man the presence of God makes. Someone whom God has to slow him down. Who is so bold and wants so much of the Lord, he doesn't care if it kills him. So Moses is supposed to be exemplary. Is your fervor to approach the darkness and accomplish God's will so burning like a flame that you'll do it if it means it'll kill you, because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. You're more afraid of missing out on what God has for you. You'd rather do it and then die than stand at a distance.
Yeah. These are the kind of men that God speaks with face to face. Those who time after time approach the darkness even though they are afraid, because they are more afraid to miss the will of God. Fear cannot determine your direction. People are either going to stand at a distance, which is death and spiritual darkness, though they pretend to be in the light, or they are going to face the terrifying circumstances that look like darkness, that might even at times feel like death, and embrace Jesus so that they are the light in the darkest of times. Let's be real. We cannot in an instant remove all fear from your future. We can't remove fear of losing your reputation as you press in to know him. Look, who cares? People have read Google reviews and things like that have been said about the church. I don't care. People have even left. They come and they're double-minded as they come here, and then they leave because I don't care. I don't care if in your own heart right now you're like, but these Google reviews, then leave. Then leave.
That's a good word.
Because at the end of the day, it's not the double-minded that have done anything for the kingdom. It's not the double-minded that have actually benefited anyone. That's why he says they shouldn't expect to receive anything in James 1. What I'm telling you is, if this is hard for you, the reputation, the idea of being associated with the people of God, if that's hard for you when people push against it in some way, I'm going to tell you, that's entry-level stuff. That's entry-level stuff. That's entry-level stuff. We can't remove the fear of what will happen to your wife and kids as you press in. I can't remove the fear of what's going to happen to your wife and kids that you might have. And what if we do this? Yeah. We can't remove fear of the kind of living situation or the lack of comfort that you'll find yourself in as you press in. We're not going to remove that fear. What we can tell you is, man, you should fear God more than those things. Don't let the presence of fear determine your direction. Yeah, but I fear what that might do to them. Do it anyways. Do it. It's what the Lord has shown you. Do it. But what about what will they say about me? But I've really gained a good reputation with these people. Who cares? Screw your reputation. Who cares? Who cares about your reputation if what kills it is to be known as passionate for the Lord, extreme for the kingdom? If that's what kills your reputation, then it should be killed. Let it be killed. Join in killing it.
And see, you're not guaranteed that you won't have that fear rise up again. But what you can settle in your heart is you can guarantee, I don't care what the fear is, it's not going to determine my direction. No matter what the fear is, I'm always going to move on. I will always approach the darkness because light is on the other side. And being in that light will make your face shine. It will make your family better. The harder ministry is, the more pressing all the obstacles are, I see my family shine even more. I never saw Joy shine better than when she thought she might have cancer. She didn't, praise the Lord, but I never saw her shine brighter than under that kind of threat. You will find that the darkness, it develops your family. It's like a dark room for you to develop you into something greater. All of Moses speaking with God would culminate in the construction of the tabernacle.
Yeah.
Where the people would fellowship with him.
Yeah.
A place where God and man would dwell together. Let's consider how it's laid out. Look at this slide. The gates of praise are well illuminated. It's outside, it's natural light. The bronze altar is well illuminated. The laver is well illuminated. But the holy place has no natural light whatsoever inside of it. And there's no light bulbs, there's no recessed lighting. The table of bread and the golden altar of incense are only illuminated by the light of the menorah. No sunlight, no artificial lights, only the Spirit of God. The menorah lights up the holy place. See, the closer you get, the darker it is, so you can actually see the only true source of light is him. It gets even more dramatic than this. Behind the holy place is a very deep veil, a curtain. I'm not talking about those cute curtains you got in your house that let light in. This is the origin of blackout curtains right here. Beyond the holy place, where almost no one would go, there's no light. It's pitch black. The menorah nothing shines through to the most holy place. And you have to have faith that when you get in there, that maybe God, who is light, will himself have to illuminate the way so you could spread the blood on the altar. You're going to have to trust that even though it looks pitch black, once you approach the darkness, he will find a way to supernaturally light your way. There's no light closer. The closer you get, except for him. The closer you get to your calling and your purpose, what you're called to do, there's going to be no way for you to do it in your own strength, as Pastor was saying earlier. He's going to ensure that he's the only way you see. He's going to ensure he's the only way you have the strength. Because the closer you get, everything else is blackened out. And it's only him. Look at Exodus 26:30. Set up the tabernacle according to the plan shown you on the mountain. Make a curtain of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely twisted linen, with a cherubim woven into it by a skilled worker. Hang it with golden hooks on 4 posts of acacia wood, overlaid with gold and standing on 4 silver bases. Hang the curtain from the clasps and place the Ark of the Covenant law behind the curtain. The curtain will separate the holy place from the most holy place. Put the atonement cover on the Ark of the Covenant law in the most holy place. Place the table outside the curtain on the north side of the tabernacle and put the lampstand opposite on the south side. Nothing is beyond the curtain but the ark. But it was here, beyond the reach of light, where God would meet the priests. Exodus 25:21. It says in verse 22, there I will meet with you. It is there, beyond the darkness, behind the curtain, where there's no light. It is there I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in a commandment for the people of Israel. Moses was the first into the darkness on the mountain. But in doing so, he made a way for brothers to answer their call so they could approach the darkness, so they could speak with God. He wasn't the only righteous man who faced this kind of darkness. Intimidating obstacles that caused him to be afraid. I want to show you how more men respond in the midst of fear.
Isn't it beautiful too? I'm just thinking up here for a second. Wasn't Abraham called out of Ur of the Chaldees? Babylon, the fires of confusion. Remember that? He was called out of darkness. He was called out of confusion. Leading down to Moses being called into a consuming fire, as Hebrews 12 describes. But that consuming fire was meant to burn up everything that didn't belong. Everything that you had accumulated and brought in with you that didn't belong. And this keeps going and going. Anyways, we'll stay focused here. Righteous men have faced fearful situations, intimidating obstacles that caused them to be afraid. Fear was present in these men that we're about to show you, trembling even. But we want to show you how they responded in the midst of fear so that this becomes a normal response for men of God in this house. Through the darkness to be with God. I'll read you from Job 23, 13 through 17. Listen to what Job says. But he stands alone. He's speaking this of God. And who can oppose him? He does whatever he pleases. That he does. He carries out his decree against me. And many such plans he still has in store. That is why I am terrified before him. Do you hear Job admitting the terror? When I think of all this, I fear him. God has made my heart faint. The Almighty has terrified me. Verse 17, yet I am not silenced by the darkness, by the thick darkness that covers my face. Look at that slide, Job 23:17. I am not silenced by the thick darkness. I'm going to utilize the fact that you guys know a lot of Job's story in this moment. Job is going through suffering, hardship, difficulty, loss, happening all around him. He's describing all of the way that this feels as thick darkness around him. But how does he respond? Does he walk away from God? No, though that was a temptation. Does he isolate himself? No. He has righteous men around him, though they're not behaving righteously in this circumstance. Job, in the midst of this thick darkness, says, I'm not silenced by the darkness, and he speaks with God. What ends up happening as a result of Job speaking with God throughout this suffering process in the midst of the thick darkness? Job himself is restored. Job's friends are restored and able to fellowship with him. That's what happens as Job is speaking, fellowshipping with, pressing into God in spite of the thick darkness that's all around him. Do you see that? Speak to God in the midst of suffering. Walk through the darkness, speaking to God in the midst of suffering. Because on the other side of that, it will be light, and you'll have fellowship again. You'll be renewed and restored, and like Moses, you will shine.
Leviticus 16:1. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, who died when they approached the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, tell your brother Aaron that he is not to come whenever he chooses into the most holy place behind the curtain, in front of the atonement cover on the ark, or else he will die. I will appear in the cloud over the atonement cover. This is how Aaron is to enter the most holy place. He must first bring a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. The presence had actually killed Aaron's sons because they did it the wrong way. And yet, Aaron does not stand at a distance. Aaron continues as priest, approaches the darkness again, and will be in the most holy place with his God, despite it being the very thing that killed his sons. See, nothing intimidated him because he had been on the mountain of God. He has seen his presence, and so nothing could stop him from actually obeying God. He was willing to pay that price. Look at that slide. It says, he approaches darkness first in the most holy place after his sons die, because he was called to do it.
Think about that for a second. Once again, God doesn't cause the situation to make it easy. The way that he presents himself, the way that he manifests, he doesn't do it so that it's easy for you. That's why a lot of people don't go very far because it's not easy. Aaron, before he ever goes into the most holy place, experiences the death of his sons because they were in sin as they were ministering in the tabernacle. Now Aaron's being called into the one place that nobody else has been. Do you think Aaron wasn't for a moment thinking, I can't go, I also have been sinful? Remember, Aaron helped the people make the golden calf. Do you think Aaron is not thinking back through every sinful thing that he's done and trying to make sure that as he goes into this place that he himself will be accepted? When you think about what you've been called to do, has anybody taken into consideration how much you've messed up and sinned and all the errors that you've already made and said, how could I presume to go and do this thing for the Lord? I've made so many mistakes. These are the details surrounding Aaron for the first time going into the most holy place. Is that he saw firsthand what sin will do to someone as they're trying to approach God. And it was with his own sons. He experienced that happening, and then he himself was called to go all the way in. Brothers, can I tell you, your sin, the sins of your past, don't disqualify you from going into your calling. If God has called you to do it, fear him. Don't stand back, disqualify yourself and say, I can't go into that because I've already sinned too much. Aaron, as the high priest, went into the most holy place, not because he was righteous and had never sinned, but because he had been atoned for. That's why he was able to go in.
Sometimes you're going to approach the darkness in your life and you're going to make some mistakes. It's going to burn you. You're going to feel like you're a failure. And yet, just like Aaron, you're going to have to approach it again. You cannot walk away and stand at a distance from your calling. This was a horrible thing that happened. You're going to try. You're going to try and evangelize to somebody. Feels like approaching the darkness and doesn't go very well in your eyes. You're going to try and shepherd your family in the Word, and it feels like in your eyes it doesn't go very well. You're going to try and correct a brother. It's going to feel like it doesn't go very well, but he's going to continue to beckon you. You have to approach the darkness because that's where God is. He's going to perpetually put you in that situation. Look at 2 Samuel 15:23. The setting of this, David's fled the city. Absalom has taken over. Sounds like a pretty dark situation, doesn't it? Yeah. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on towards the wilderness. Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, take the Ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it and his dwelling place again. But if he says, I am not pleased with you, then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him. There's a perspective. The king also said to Zadok the priest, do you understand? Go back to the city with my blessing. Take your son, Ahimaaz, with you, and also Abiathar's son, Jonathan. You and Abiathar return with your 2 sons. I will wait at the fords in the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. So Zadok and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. They were the priests. They were the ones carrying the presence of God. And they were commanded by the king to take the presence of God into a very dark situation. They were not, Absalom, I'm sure, was not excited to see these men.
Yeah, they could have died.
This could have killed them, but the king asked them to do it. The king, see, these men had been in the presence of God. They had approached the darkness, and now they themselves are representatives of the light of God. And the king asked them, you go into the darkness now. You go into the darkness of the world, and you shine my light in it. See, once you have enough experience with the light, your face is going to be radiant. He's going to ask you, now take that and you turn the darkness into light in the world. And Zadok does it.
You think there was no part of David that wanted that ark to stay with him? You think David, I asked the question in a weird way. When you think about the ark, David used to minister before the ark. He was there spending time with the Lord before the ark. In fact, he's the one who had the ark brought back to the city. Because he said in the days of Saul, they didn't consult with it. We're going to bring the ark back so that we can consult God. Now his own son has formed a coup and betrayed him and kicked him out of the city. And they don't know what to do. Don't you think there was a part of him that was saying, I need the ark more than ever right now? And yet he himself said, no. Don't leave Jerusalem without the ark. He cared more about them, so he himself was entering into darkness by sending the ark back. Zadok and Abiathar, taking the ark back in, they had already left the city. It was known, guaranteed. These are the high priests. It was known that they were allying with David and left the city. Them going back in, Absalom might have said, what are you doing back here? I thought you were allied with my dad. Kill him. The end. Going into the darkness because it's what the king had asked him to do. David going into the darkness because he cared more for others' well-being than he did for his own self.
Won't read it all, but in 1 Kings 8, Zadok's there when the temple's built. Zadok, who is faithful to David, is faithful to his son.
Yeah.
And it's Zadok's sons who bring the ark into the finished temple. And you know what happens when they do that? It says, the priests withdrew from the holy place because the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled his temple. They carry the presence. They're faithful to it all those years, and they place it in its resting place in the temple. And his presence comes again, and Solomon intercedes to the Lord on behalf of the whole nation because they were faithful to the light for generations. And so they were entrusted as the high priest in 1 Kings 2:35. There's a carrying on of the work for generations of carrying the light that we're called to be. Called to carry the light for generations so that the next generation can also have the light, could also have the courage to approach the darkness. You have no idea the kind of testimony and courage your life of approaching darkness is supposed to do in others.
It's what's required of the high priest, isn't it? Every high priest needed to be the kind of man who could enter into the darkness. Every high priest. Into the most holy place. This whole idea of you being the light of the world, think about how the story begins in Genesis. Darkness, tohu vavohu. And yet he speaks light into the world. When Jesus declares that you are the light of the world, he sends light into darkness. The world is dark. You are the light. He sends light into darkness. So don't be surprised when some people are terrified by your presence. When some people want to be at a distance from you. But on the other side of whatever fears they have about you and what you're bringing is life. And they too can have fellowship in the light. In each of these stories, God manifests in ways that instill fear in the people because he wants them to fear him, to follow his instructions. Remember Deuteronomy 5:29. Oh, that their hearts would be inclined to fear me always, so that they would follow my instructions, so that they would obey my commands. But speaking to God and moving forward through the fearful, thick darkness will break open the way for others to join. Moses pressing through the darkness on the mountain to speak with God made a way for others to fellowship on the mountain with God. Formed a part of their culture that you read about in the last part of Exodus that would ultimately become the tabernacle of God. Job pressing through the darkness to speak with God made a way for his friends to be restored. Aaron's willingness to press through the darkness and speak with God made him an intercessor and an example for the generations. Zadok's willingness to go back into the darkness to speak with God earned him and his descendants an eternal place in the priesthood of God. Jesus himself in his darkest hour spoke with God and moved forward, which made a way for every one of us. In his darkest hour, he pressed through the darkness to speak with God, and then he moved forward in what he was called to do. And he set an example for the brothers that would follow, who would share in the same fate as he did, and would follow the same model, the same process, all the way down till today, to us. To in the moment of the thickest darkness, even in the presence of fear, to walk through the darkness, to speak with God, and to move forward in what he's called us to do.
We're coming to an ending. I'm going to run through several of these scriptures again, because when Moses enters into his presence, he speaks with God and he hears from God. And so we're asking you in the room, many of you have darkness in front of you. You know you're called to obey him as he has directed you, and there is darkness in front of you. Maybe it's many, like I said, there's many mamas in the room about to give birth. That can feel like darkness. Many of you are trying to raise teenagers or kids. That can feel like going through darkness to try and raise godly offspring. Some of you know there's a calling in your life for ministry, but it feels like darkness, and you're afraid. And every single one of those, so what do you do about it now? We're asking you to begin to cry out and speak to God to give you the courage to approach the darkness.
Amen. Amen.
Because that's what Moses did. That's what these men did. They conversed and spoke and made their requests known to God, and he helped them, and they moved on regardless of the fear. See, in Numbers 12, it says that he speaks mouth to mouth with the Lord. They're speaking. In Exodus 33, speaking face to face. In Exodus 20, they fear the voice of God as Moses is speaking to God on their behalf. In Exodus 14, he speaks with God when he is afraid. In Exodus 19, he speaks with him. Exodus 20, 34, all these times, he speaks and has fellowship with God in the face of fear. Because he knows his God is the only way he can help him. He knows he is the source of courage. And he is the goal of approaching the darkness. Worship team, want to come to the stage, please. Again, darkness is not your sin. It's the fear God has placed in front of you so that you can be tested and approved to actually come into his presence and hear his voice and obey him. Moses did this habitually every time, despite his fear, and his face shone. And he led others up the mountain as well. When you think about this picture of approaching the darkness, what you do in that moment. Fathers in the room, parents in the room, you know what? You're in a scary situation. And you have your little kids with you. What do they often do? They cling to your leg. Kids get afraid a lot. Notice how when your little children are afraid and they come near to you, all fear leaves them immediately. When you have the fear of what God is calling you to do, you're facing the darkness. The answer is to cling to him. The answer is to hold tightly to him, because he will give you the courage to press through the darkness. Stand to your feet. At the dedication of the temple, Solomon says these words. Solomon speaks with the Lord. And listen to how the Lord responds. The Lord responds, if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. And now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayer that is made in this place. Saints, if you see darkness in front of you, a dark situation that is intimidating you, but you know